Hello, everybody. This is Angel Ribo, the CEO Confident, and we are here today again with Neville Joffe, the CEO of Biz Wisdom. Hi, Neville. How are you?
Hi, Angel. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're here today again to talk about another of your chapters, another of the chapters of your book, The Baker's Dozen Rules of Highly Successful Business Operators. And let me tell you, since I read your book, this chapter has especially impacted my life. And you will understand why. The title of the chapter is So What? So there's so many people that brag about so many things, not only at the business level, but also the personal level, that so what? So what does that really represent? So let's go down to business. So first of all, why do you think that knowing the business implications of someone's, of a business operator, of a C-level operator, business decisions is so important and relevant today, Neville?
You know, Angel, people tend to, and this is another chapter title we'll talk about another time, people tend to look at numbers in isolation.
Okay.
So in today's terms, there are so many moving parts and so many things that are changing all the time that it's important for business operators, leaders, etc., and executives in companies to understand the implications of certain decisions without looking at them in isolation. They cannot afford to look in isolation. So, you know, even for example, we say, well, people have to work remotely. You might say, like, so what? How do we deal with this? How do we turn a lemon into lemonade? There's so many questions right now that people shouldn't take for granted.
Exactly, and there's so many things that are actually being measured. You were talking about, you know, measuring numbers in isolation. So, or considering numbers in isolation. So there's lots of things that have been going on right now. Every single company in the world, we are in October 2020, every single company in the world has to do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't start consistently to say, so what I have been doing for so many years, so what might happen that, you know, it's today so much more relevant?
So I'm going to answer your question in a bit of a roundabout way. I have a philosophy that nobody washes a rented car because there's no sense of ownership. And it's very hard when people are working remotely, where you don't sense and feel the culture and draw each other's energy. So all the more reason now that people are working remotely, that they need to engage people and need to give people a reason to want to come to work other than just a salary check. There needs to be a bigger purpose. So to that end, I've been adopting a mantra of not only of late, but for a long time already, but I've sort of put into a logo, which I'll be happy to share with listeners if you want to see a copy of this. Essentially what it is this: in the middle, there's driving sustainable profits and cash flow. The word sustainable is the operative word. And around the circle of sustainable profits and cash flow, there are three arrows or three messages. The one is accountability. It's the first one. You want to hold your people accountable for their actions because people should be accountable. They have a responsibility. You need to engage them and you need to educate them. But it's not fair to hold them accountable if you don't educate them. And if you educate them, then it's reasonable to get them engaged. So to get people engaged in processes takes away this whole notion of the so what, because they don't see numbers in isolation. People will say, well, my revenues are up, and they'll say, okay, so what? What about the profitability? What about cash flow? They may say, well, we've hired more people, we're doing great. We'll say, so what? Maybe we're not being as efficient as we should be. People start thinking at a deeper level, always with a single reason why we're in business, is to drive shareholder value. And everybody should be engaged in that conversation, especially now that they're working remotely. So they don't see their own jobs in isolation. Their job is part of a bigger purpose.
Exactly. This book, you know, this is the cover of the book, has every single chapter has a very, very interesting structure. So it's basically the chapter itself, and then there's a series of questions. And then there's even, you know, several pages of notes. And I'm reading one of the questions of your so what chapter. For instance, so does your HR department tend to talk about how satisfied your employees are? That's a very charged question. do they tend to talk about this? Even now, they're working remotely. So maybe, people are happy. So what? What are the consequences of that happiness today? What is the effect of that happiness today that the company has changed so much that everybody works remotely and that resources are much more critical than before? So what, right?
A lot of HR, with no disrespect to HR or training, they see things in isolation, in the sense that we've done a survey and people are happy. The next thing you know, they're leaving. Staff attrition, employee attrition is very expensive. And it's a known fact that people often leave not because of financial remuneration, they leave because they're not happy. People are significantly more happy in organizations when they felt needed, when they feel that they are contributing, when they're engaged in decision making. They will put that before money for the most part.
Let me ask you another question. Actually, just yesterday, Neville and I were having a conversation with a C-level executive of a very large IT company. And we were having a conversation about the sales force of that particular company. And, he was talking about, how important it is, how all the sales force, the members of the sales force, all those managers and VPs adapt to the new situation, right? So, and some salespeople might say, but I've been here successful for so many years, for 20 years or 30 years, right? So immediately, the question that comes from this level executive, so what, right? So how does that mean that what worked for the last 20, 30 years is going to work now? What's going to be the effect of doing the same thing the same way, right, Neville?
Yes, we had a fantastic conversation. In fact, he was talking about the holy grail in business, where if he could get his salespeople to be, rewarded for the success of the customer in relationship to the product or service they sold, that would be a game changer. Because making a sale the first time is not without its issues. And we spoke about the moment you make a sale, you're part of your customer's problem. Why? Because you're an expense on their P&L and your revenues and yours. And until you can demonstrate that the incremental gain on your customer's P&L will exceed the cost of the product or services, you're part of their problem. And this is a big wow thing, because he kept saying, well, we're employing really highly educated salespeople, engineers. And my first statement to him was, so what? Are they selling profitably, not only for your company, but for the customer? And then he came up with this idea, we should be celebrating the success and profits of the customer. So the whole notion of so what triggers a whole lot of other questions. And everything should lead back to another chapter in the book, we'll talk about it another time, is win-win. It's got to be a win for you, but it's also got to be a win for your customer, and you have to prove it. Otherwise, you're part of their problem, not their solution.
Absolutely. So, Neville, if the people that are listening to us or watching us today, if they would like to know more about that, what's the best way to connect with you?
I mean, just email me, Neville, Neville, @bizwisdom, bizwisdom.com. In fact, if you send me a note, I'll be happy to send you a list of the actual questions for each chapter in a soft copy. You can use these to ask some of your employees. I think you can have some very colorful conversations.
You bet, absolutely. So thank you very much, Neville, for being with us today. It's been a blessing.
You're very welcome, Angel, anytime.
Absolutely, thank you. And again, to everybody watching us, thank you very much for being with us today. I am sure that you have enjoyed this conversation with Neville Joffe, the CEO of BizWisdom, as much as we have. And see you soon in our next conversation. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye now.